Certainly, I'm delighted that they are here. The installation of the pastor at the cathedral has a special significance throughout the diocese because the cathedral has really a preeminent role to play in the life of the diocese, as it is the seat of the bishop. And every altar, as one of the early church fathers indicated, is really an extension of the bishop's altar. And every baptismal font is the extension of the cathedral font. It is the church that connects the rest of the church to the apostolic faith that we profess, and it connects us to the bishop as well. And so as we gather here today, I think it's important for us to recognize that connection, and especially for those of you who are parishioners here at St. Andrew Cathedral and who worship here regularly, that you have a very special role to play in the life of the diocese, in continuing to bring life and vitality to this community and to continue to celebrate in faith all that we are. In many ways, it's the flagship church of the diocese. This installation and profession of faith, however, is a reminder and commitment to our connection to the apostolic faith through the apostles and their successors. As you know, we are not a congregational church where the congregation determines its beliefs, its style of governance, or many other aspects of our church. And yet we believe that the church as it exists is divinely constituted, and it is rooted in Christ Jesus, and the apostolic faith is passed on to us through the patrimony that has been given to us and is shared with us through the successors of the apostles, the bishops of the church. In many other congregations, when there would be an opening for a pastor, the congregation would gather and assemble a job description, identify what they were looking for in the new pastor, and then they would establish a search committee to scour the country to find exactly the right person for that particular position. And eventually they would find some, they would invite others to come and preach, and eventually the congregation would select the new pastor. As you probably figured out, we don't do it that way in our community. Rather, pastors come as disciples, as people who are sent. They are sent to do the work of the Lord, to work with a community of people, but they are not sent simply to do the work of the people, but rather they are sent to do the work of the Lord himself. And obviously sometimes that's a very difficult thing to establish. What is it that the Lord is asking of us at a given moment in time in history? I know when I was much younger, I was much clearer about what the Lord was asking of us all to do. But then once I got to a certain stage in my life, I discovered that I had a lot more questions than I had a lot more answers. And somehow having more questions is probably a healthier attitude for all of us than having all the answers that we think we have at times and really do not have. The world in which we live is a very difficult world and has many challenges these days. Certainly our country and the world is very different now because of the terrorists that exist, and we never quite know when they're going to strike and do whatever damage they are going to do. The economy continues to struggle. People struggle with their faith, and the church has its own particular struggles today in a way perhaps that we did not have 30, 40 years ago. But that doesn't mean that the Lord is not with us. And I think the challenge for us all as God's people is to recognize that God is with us in a very special way. What the pastor is called upon to help us all do is to help us live in obedient faith, an obedient faith that doesn't always have a lot of popular notions connected with it. Because when we think of obedience, we think of that as somehow something that somebody is imposing what they want on somebody else. But rather, it's not that at all. It's a faithfulness to the Lord that we are called upon. And when we speak of obedient faith, it is a faithfulness where we are obedient to what it is the Lord wants us to do and not particularly what we may want to do. today in the readings that we heard, in particular the readings from Hebrews, it speaks to us of the obedient faith of Abraham. He became the father of many nations, and he went out to a different land, not knowing what the Lord was asking of him, and not knowing where it was that he was to go. But he did so, and he did what the Lord asked of him, and the Lord blessed him abundantly because of his obedient faith. And what he did was, he did what he did because he thought the one who made the promise was trustworthy. He believed in God. And I think that's the challenge that you and I are often faced with in our own lives, is our belief in God, our belief in Jesus, sometimes as opposed to our belief in ourselves. It isn't that we don't believe in ourselves, but beyond that, there has to be that belief in God and that belief in Christ and what he asks us to do. In the gospel passage from St. Luke today, we are reminded not to be afraid because your Father is pleased to give you the kingdom. Fear is something that very often incapacitates us. It freezes us in our present moment and doesn't allow us to move beyond that. It enables that fear, in a sense, restricts us in so many, many ways. And it is a sense, a reflection on our own lack of security and our own lack of faith in what the Lord is asking of us. And so the challenge for us all is to move beyond the fear. And that's what Jesus tells us in the gospel. Do not be afraid. Your Father is pleased to give you the kingdom. We're reminded it oftentimes in the scriptures that we are to sell our belongings, we are to let go of ourselves. And it isn't just a blind letting go of ourselves, it's rather a letting go of ourselves so that we can embrace the living God with our hearts and our souls and our minds. Fear can keep us from trusting, and the challenge for us is to trust in the living God, because just as Abraham, he thought the one who made the promise was trustworthy. And the challenge for us is to recognize that the one who made the promise to us in baptism is trustworthy as well. As we come here today, the pastor comes to be formally installed, and he comes to be the messenger of good news. He comes to communicate to you the same message we heard in the scriptures. Do not be afraid, because God is with us. And what a message of hope and joy that is. What a refreshment that should be in a world that seems to be struggling and a world that seems to have so many dark clouds over it. In the midst of it, to be a light in the midst of darkness, to bring joy in the midst of sadness, and most of all, to recognize and to call you and all of us to that faithfulness, because we believe that the one who made the promise is trustworthy, and we are his servants. Pastors are servants, pastors are disciples, as we all are. And in that regard, I'm now very happy to not only to welcome Father Gainey in a special way, but I'm also happy to ask him to make a profession of faith and an oath of fidelity that in a sense reflects his connection to the apostolic faith and the apostolic tradition that we will celebrate in a very special way.